Welcome for the next appointment, for the next discussion, and maybe, of course, also next presentation in the Center for the Past, Present, and Future of Constitutional and Legal Research of Visual University in Warsaw. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be addressing political thought, or as should I say, maybe more constitutional thought from the former post-17th century Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. I invited for today Professor Mike Tracz-Turniecki.
Thank you for the invitation.
Professor of the University of Łódź, who was the publisher of Andrzej Maksymilian Fredro's work Poparcie wolności, and maybe in translation in English, Support for Freedom, which was probably written around 1669. I said probably because the work was known in various copies, but for many years it remained anonymous. And maybe you will deliver us something about these investigations you made, and you found this real copy of this work, and it was real copy for Andrzej Maksymilian Fredro. Maybe you say us some words about this.
Yeah, thank you for this. Thank you for the invitation again, and thank you for this question. Indeed, first of all, I should mention that I am a member of Alexis Tocqueville Center for Political and Legal Vote, and we just finished to publish the series of old Polish library of political vote from the 17th century. With your generous participation in the last volume about Krzysztof Hartnoch. So definitely I hope that within few months we will have a podcast with Professor Chmieliński, an expert in Hartnoch. So thank you again for this very, very close cooperation in this last volume of this series. And 6 years ago, more or less in the middle of this series, I was preparing the edition of Vir Concili, one of the treaties. Yes,
Fredro's.
Definitely. Here we've got this final edition of Vir Concili by Andrzej Maksymilian Fredro. And the problem was that generally we edited our treatises from the books published in 17th century. But in case of Vir Concili and in case of the second volume of Militarium, both works, very famous works of Fredro, they remain in manuscript during his lifetime. He passed away and he just remained both of this work as in manuscripts. So my goal was to find these manuscripts, and it was successful. And by researching them, we've got few versions of them, mainly in the archives of St. Francis Order in Krakow. And it was really a unique finding, I think, because I, of course, at the beginning intended to find the text, Fredro's original text of Vir Concili, and of course the second volume of Militarium. But I was very surprised that I found some collection of additional work of Fredro. Some of them were completely unknown, some of them were known in different version, and some of them were known as anonymous works. And one of such works was this Poparcie wolności.
Support of Freedom.
Yes. So let's translate it like a support of freedom, we could say. Because partially most of these works were written in Latin, part of them were written in Polish as this support of freedom. And it was indeed a very nice, we could say, moment in my research career.
I think that it is maybe very important for every researcher that can be able to find something new maybe something what was very well known, but everybody discussed about this, and it was delivered in different works. You know how, as example, but nobody knew who it was. This author, real author, and you found this real author. It was the Fredro just.
Yes, and we managed also to find three another copies of Support of Freedom of this Poparcie Wolności. One in Krakow, one in Polish library in Paris, and another one in Vilnius. So except of these two, which were known before, one from Ossolineum and the other from the library of the Warsaw University, now we've got 5 copies. And of course, these copies, which were prepared by Fredro,
There was differences between the copies.
Yes, of course. In this edition, I analyzed these differences, and now we've got the most extended version of this Poparcie Wolności, because what is important, he started to prepare this Poparcie Wolności just after the moment he received the information about the plan of the abdication of John Casimir. And yes, of course, our king. And first versions of this work were, let's say, present in the interregna, so just in 1668, 1669. But as we could follow from his handwritings, he worked on this Poparcie Wolności, on this Support of Freedom, till the end of his life. So generally, we've got many corrections in this manuscript. And indeed, let me quote something from one of my hobby, which is Baroque music. And I do like these editions of Polish and early Baroque music. And let me quote just a preface to one of them, Mielczewski, very famous composer from the royal court in Warsaw during the Jan Kazimierz period.
This I didn't know, that you are specialist also in Baroque music.
No, I'm a hobby. That's just my hobby. No, I'm not a specialist. I would not say like this, but I do like the introduction of the booklet to this edition by Stefan Sutkowski, a very famous founder and director of the Warsaw Chamber Opera, and he mentioned in this preface something like this. However, a dream of every researcher, publisher, or a musician, now we could say also a researcher of political doctrines as well, is to bring to light something truly unique and present it to the general public. Yes, and I also had such dreams, but I never hoped to discover more than one or two compositions.
It was possible, of course, in the Middle Ages, but not now, because it is very rarely, to find something what is quite new, and this is, of course, the very good example of this.
But in the Baroque music, especially in terms of this, let's say, Polish Baroque music in the 90s, for example, it was quite popular. It was quite common to find some unique, let's say, compositions. So all in all, this maybe not example, but rather this I did not expect it, that one day I will have a similar, let's say, situation as this famous.
And of course, if you found this, that you decided to publish this, of course, and you prepared publish this, what I show you, or this is this book, and with a very, very interesting and very, very good made prepared introduction, what follows the reader to the problems concerning this Support of Freedom. But of course, the name of this book is very specific. Support of Freedom. What does it mean? Of course, but when we come to this problem, maybe I would like to ask you to present maybe the person of the author. I mean, Andrzej Maximilian Fredro, who was and why he was the author, why and who worked in, and what was his fate, and how to say what he was his career, of course, as a politician and author and a political writer.
So Fredro, in fact, the best word to describe him was a statesman. Yeah, it was a statement. In fact, he was both an active politician and political writer at the same time. So, as an active politician, probably he is the best well known from the fact that he was a member of parliament. He was a senator. He was in charge of the Chamber of Deputies during this infamous first Sejm in the year 1652.
And I think that we should maybe discuss about this Sejm, because it is very important point of his career, but of course also very, very turning point in the history of Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth, from the point of view of the history of parliament. Maybe
yes, of course, the story which is connected with his person, or rather the myth which is connected with these stories and his role in the a proof of the concept of liberum veto, yes, is misinterpreted, unfortunately. And by referring to the diaries from the same, we could say that he was one of the most important opponent of the idea to recognize the veto. So it was quite contrary to the idea of the royal court, who supported in this aspect the veto in such a, let's say, crazy way that just one deputy could say, I disagree, and just to leave the session.
This using of this liberum veto in this time, just in this Sejm, had a very specific context, of course, because this institution was very well known in the past. It was not that it was something new and somebody found something new and used in this practice. In fact, it was very well known from the past, from the tradition, of course, and the roots are very deep in the past. And it was used, of course, in the 16th century, but of course in the quite different other manner. And now happened something strange with this liberum veto. Maybe you clear us this.
First of all, it was not an institution which was unique to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Yes, for example, maybe we should also add that Fredro was a well-known at that time political author. So started from 1652. He published several important political treatises. One of the his first book was Gestorum, so generally the story of the Polish nation under the King Henry. So that was the story of the great interregna in 16th century. And it was also the story how the Henrician articles were created. And by the way, in this book, he referred to the institution of veto, unanimous voting, in Spain. Yes? So for him, it was something which generally existed. Yes? It was not a typically Polish institution. Of course, in 1652, during this Sejm, so it was just a few months before Fredro published his Gestorum. Yes? Probably some of the experiences, some of, we could say, some maybe observation are embodied in the final text of Gestorum. And Fredro, in this moment, being we could say, a marshal of the Izba Poselska, so
head of the deputy chamber.
Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies.
It is quite maybe understandable for the other people what the person he was. Speaker in English Parliament, it is very
Yes, so generally Speaker was elected just for one Sejm, so generally it was his So it was definitely an important function in the political system of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, even though it was just held during generally the course of the same particular say. Yes,
Ah, he was
generally
in very
few.
close contact, of course, with the king, for example.
Yes, definitely. And of course should possess the support of the members of this chamber of the other deputies, yes, or at least a significant majority of them. But the case of Sejm, of Winter Sejm, as we called it very often, 1652, is, and let's say the most infamous event during this Sejm was this veto of Siciński, yes, of the Siciński. And in fact, the institution of contradiction, yes, that one member of parliament could disagree, existed before, yes, and it, for example, it was criticized before it was fully adopted, for example, by Łukasz Opoliński, yes, just, that's a very funny story that he criticized Liberum Veto before it was fully adopted, yes, at that moment. But of course, at that moment, Fredro, who was born in 1620, 21, so generally at that time he was a man of, generally he was a relatively young,
As a politician.
yes, as a politician, but
But
relatively
of course, the
experienced.
people from the very, very high families, for example, Radziwiłł, they were just about even 18 and 20, but he had special position, of
Yes,
course.
but he all in all belonged to the, let's say, middle class, even though relatively rich, but still middle class nobleman. Yes, we could say. And definitely, Fredro was aware of the potential troubles and potential threats related to Liberum Veto. So at the beginning, he ignored this veto of Siciński, and he tried to persuade the chamber. At that time, chamber was combined with Senate and King, just to ignore this veto and proceed to move on. We were just ignoring this veto, especially that this Siciński just left the session and just disappeared. Yes, so in that moment, according to diaries, especially diaries from which were prepared for Gdańsk town council, yes, very important diaries from Polish Sejms, they definitely presented his role in this Sejm, in this very last day, as one of the most important actor who try to prevent this veto to be recognized. But all in all, during the course of historiography, but starting from the late 19th century, he started to be blamed as the main, let's say, the most important person who is responsible for this act. So, in fact, we've got a black legend of Fredro due to this. Unfortunately, I do regret. A few years ago, I published a long text about this, the role of the new, let's say, the role of Fredro during this same. But unfortunately, probably it would take definitely several years to give this man true justice in this in case of this his role in this Sejm. But we concentrated on this black legend of Fredro at the beginning, what probably is a good solution, yes, because let's start to deal with the main problem which is connected with his biography. Yes, but except of this, he was active politician, one of the supporter of the king during the Swedish deluge. Yes, the local leader in Ruthenian voivodeship, related with such towns or cities like Przemyśl and Lwów. Yes, so to both of them, he was an important figure. The man who was taken into consideration as a candidate for a Polish crown, together with Michał Korybut. Yes, Michał Korybut finally won, but at that time, during this interregna, during the period he prepared this Poparcie Wolności, just few months ago, he was one of the, let's say, a person who was taken into consideration, yes, together with Korybut. So that's one of the signs of his popularity among the Polish nobility.
Yeah.
And finally, he was also a member of the Royal Council of King Sobieski, because Sobieski personally respected very much Fredro. This book, Vir Concili, was dedicated to Sobieski. Sobieski was one of the first reader of this book. A special manuscript copy was prepared for him. Of course, as we know, they lived relatively close together. Yes.
So we have very colorful person and a very good writer, not very well known in Poland and our Commonwealth, but his works were also edited in other countries,
Yes, because
especially this Latin.
yes, maybe the question, because the most important printing houses in Europe at that time were located in the Netherlands. Yes, mainly in
Amsterdam.
Yes, in Amsterdam. And generally, most of his most important works of Fredro were published in Gdańsk publishing office of Forster family. By the way, when we referring to this Baroque music, Caspar Forster was one of this, let's say top 10 Polish Baroque musicians, yes, composers, also at this royal court in Warsaw. So we could say that the music today will play some important role in our discussion, yes, for the second time, not only Merchevsky, but Caspar Forster. And
this Forster is not his family had not connection with this writer Forster because he came from the Germany.
No, it was George Forster. Yes, George Forster was established this printing house, and generally Fredro published most of his books in this publishing house in Gdańsk, and they've got a very strong connections with the printing offices in Amsterdam. So due to this, his works were, we could say, printed in the Netherlands, some of them. But except of this, some of his works, like Monita, Politica Moralia, were indeed popular around the Europe and were translated into foreign languages. So generally, we could say that at that time in 17th century, he was relatively well known, not only in Poland, because in Poland he was first of all, we could say, known from his political writings like Scriptorum, we could say, but first of all due to his Polish proverbs, mainly.
Yes. And mostly they were the political treatise concerning these political problems, mostly connected with the history of and with the political life of Commonwealth in this time. So this treatise gave us the picture and some ideas for the reforms, of course, and this work you prepared in wydawnictwo sejmowe, just support of freedom. They were also something like the treatise, but I should say maybe it was much more than only political thought. It was something like a constitutional thought. So should I say it is probably a bit different because it is connected especially with constitutional form of Commonwealth, and this is like some so-called maybe constitutional thought, I should say.
Yeah, definitely, because there are generally three important works of Fredro related to, we could truly say, constitutional vote, early modern constitutional vote. First of all, Gestorum, this book about the history of Great Interregna, because here we've got the discussions related to the creation of Henrician articles, some excerpts from the Henrician articles, some comments to the Henrician articles. So definitely this work was related strongly to the constitutional issue. We could say it even that Fredro could be treated as a man who truly invented the concept of constitutional moment, long before Bruce Ackerman, because
No,
indeed he concentrated on the period, on the people, on the ideas were circulated during
the people preparing
Mhm.
for something like the ground for this. This is the moment,
Mhm.
preparing something what came next, what come next in one act, for example. And this is this moment. And of course, the election of 15th century was just the same. It was just such moment because uh, they had to find something like a new way how to organize this Commonwealth.
Mhm.
And it was a crisis, something like a crisis, and they were aware that they have to prepare something what will be ready for the next king, and organization of the republic will be organized in a specific based on a fundamental act. Of course, these principles of this act were very well known, of course, in the past, but this was a constitutional act what organized all this republic, maybe not so very good precisely, but not chaotic. I should you have something to object for your view that you prepared something in this text that I wrote in my monograph of Henderson articles that the arrangement was somewhat chaotic. I mean, but I think that not because I wrote that in the context of the situation in which the articles were created, most likely present in different orders, or to provoke, had to debate on the matter. And but in fact, when they ordered this act, in fact, with the hierarchy of different hierarchy of provisions, and these provisions were very organized. You know, it was the supreme power, king, same constitutional royal council, and it was the supreme power. And then was, of course, the relation between these organs of supreme power based on the law, of course, and the competences and tasks, something like this. And also, there was the presentation of the most important laws and liberties, and they also gave, or they gave in this act also the guarantees, the systematic guarantees for these principles, especially laws and liberties, what they had. And I would not like to say that it was something like the how chaotic. It was quite very good organized. Very similar, I found in this book, this organization, because of course this is much more better prepared. You know, it is quite a new view of the political system. But the main composition of this system is very clear and very similar to this what was made in Henderson articles. Of course, there are differences in different details, and Fredro added different questions to this act, to this treatise and the proposal of this reform of this republic. But it was still in the same way how the Commonwealth was organized. Of course, with different questions, they should be make this system better. Maybe you say about this organization, so about this proposition.
All right, definitely. So just maybe I will just add one question of these three important works of Fredro related to a constitution and constitutionalism. And then I come back to this poparcie wolności when the question of structure is one of the fundamental one. Because First of all, as I mentioned at the beginning, he started from Gestorum, we know, constitutional moment, as he managed to catch the moment of the republic in which the constitution was created, yes, and the form of government was created. The last moment, the third treatise is related to the, let's say, constitutional concepts, are connected with this Vir Concili. So his last treatises, and in this book, he managed to solve the issue of the relation between the republic and the king. Yeah, because it was a constant problem of Polish political vote. What to do with the Commonwealth, with the republic, with the king. So we are the kingdom or we are a republic, yes? And
Wow.
and in this book, in this Vir Concili, during the reign of Jan Sobieski, he managed to create the concept how king, who was a Polish citizen, yeah, because it was important. We've got the moment when we've got not the, let's say, elected, of course, kings from the Vasa dynasty, but we've got the kings which were Polish citizens, like Korybut, Sobieski. And this topic enabled him to resolve the question how to combine the idea of the king with the idea of the republic. But let's leave this topic and let's concentrate on the second book, so on this support of freedom, on Poparcie Wolności. And in Poparcie Wolności, it is in fact not a treatise. It's not a political treatise in the form like Gestorum or Vir Concili. In fact, it's a project of the legal act. It's a project of the new constitution. Yes, of course, it's much easier to prepare a project of a new constitution by one single person, yeah, because it reflects the structure of thinking just of one person, not a collective works of many. And what is important, in this book, the whole book, according to Fredro, is created as a general project of the new legal act, of the fundamental laws, yes, of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. This book possessed the preamble, yes, in which he described that it is important. Maybe I will just translate it. How is it in? What the famous proverb started this book? New cases bring new laws and new legal acts. That's an old Latin and Polish saying. No legislator is so deeply prudent to anticipate all possible cases and regulate them. Yes, he started why it is important now to amend the constitution, let's say, of this Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, because the new interregna would start it, yes, within few months. He was informed that, of course, Jan Kazimierz mentioned that he is intended to.
And he tried to say that it is just this next moment. So it was probably very good next constitutional moment to change something. But of course, it was not that we destroy completely this system of Commonwealth because it was organized on the Henrician articles. And but probably it was necessary to move different factors in connection to the Henrician articles, because in my opinion, it is not to say that the position of king in Henrician articles was weak. It was quite strong position. Difference was that this position was written in one act, because first in the past it was not written. It was only tradition. The king has the position. Some, of course, acts, some principles like Constitution Nihil Novi show that he had, and he was moved to the something like the position of the ruler of executive power. It was, of course, because it was made this. And some principle came, and then it was written in the constitution. Then the first of all, the position of king was uh, written, not lies only in tradition. And this was very important, what the Henrician articles played. And position was quite strong because he had very good competences. And he could decide in the royal council and something like this, and he could be able to decide about everything what was outside Sejm. Only when the Sejm came, of course, then king had a special position, very strong position the Sejm, because he was only one person who could accept, probably should we say, accept the laws, because this power he had. And it was, of course, important up to the middle of the 17th century, just about to the reign of Vladislav IV. And after this, after the deluge, of course, something changed in this position, because king was alone person during the deluge, and Sejm was not able to work. And it was the possible that kings started probably with different specific reforms, as John Casimir started, and he wanted to make this shuruburu on this political life. And but in fact, in the next 2 years, in the second half of the 17th century, his position as king was weaker to the Sejm. Sejm reached much more better position, and it was this fact that probably it was also should I say that it was also should be prepared just in this poparcie wolności, where Fredro was aware that he could change something in this structure of the Commonwealth, and to find a new position for these different factors of this politics, like the Sejm and king. And this relation was quite different, maybe, like in Henrician articles.
Yeah, indeed, for Fredro, the problem with the king within Commonwealth was not so much the issue, whenever his power is strong or not. Because, be honest, this book was prepared inter alia because Fredro was a witness how the king could easily abuse his power and could easily, by political trial, force one of the most influential politician in the country, hero of the deluge, so Jerzy Sebastian Lubomirski, to sentence him to death and force him to leave the country. Of course, then we've got the whole civil war in Poland, but still, the position of king, according to Fredro, was relatively strong, and he could, and king could easily abuse his power in order to organize such political trials, like against Lubomirski and against Radziejowski earlier. Yes, that was the example of relatively strong position of the king, political position of the king. So it was not so much the issue. For him, the issue was what was the position of a king in relation to Commonwealth. Whenever king is one of us, or whenever king is somehow who is out of the Commonwealth. So in this poparcie wolności, he referred to the example of marriage, that Commonwealth is a wife and king is a husband. Yes, so generally someone who still is, of course, this relation is strong. We've got the very, very, let's say, unique and very strong, let's say, union between king and Commonwealth, but he is, let's say, some element which is outside of Commonwealth. Then in this Vir Concili, when he met the situation that we've got the national civic kings, he came to idea that in fact king should be someone like an economus, referring to relating to the idea of like a steward of some business, yes, who is
Manager.
manager. He referred to the Latin term economus. Yes, economus. So it's like a steward, and it is very similar to the Lockean concept of trustee within the commercial company. Yes. So generally, we could say that finally, at the end, in this Vir Concili, he came to the idea which was very close to the idea of trustee of Lockean. But here, he came to the different idea that, all right, what to do with a king if king could easily abuse his power and could organize these political trials of Radziejowski, of Lubomirski, how to avoid this situation.
Was such experiences of this time, of course.
Yes, so definitely, because it was just prepared 1 year after, even not 1 year, no, 1 year after.
And they were favorites, of course, sometime.
Of course, generally the situation was complicated, but Fredro came to idea how we could how we could support and how we could defend freedom within our model of government. He came to the idea of the division of power, which was much.
But division of power was very well known from the Constitution Nihil Novi, but also division for the legislative and for the executive power, not for the third element of this divided power, like this judicial power. It was not in the Constitution Nihil Novi 1505. It was not. But when Stefan Batory, the Great, as I said, the Great made this in 1576 tribunal. It was something like a division of the third power, like judicial power, or not?
Yes, and first of all, we've got the concept of the division of power, which was
because the judicial power was something like a part of the executive power at this time.
Yes, but first of all, the most important element of the division of power in 17th century, generally adopted in this early years of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, referred to the model of Polybius. Yes, to the ancient Roman Republic concept of the mixed government, mixed constitution, mixed republic. So we've got the monarchical element, aristocratical one, and democratic.
But in fact, I think that it was always organized earlier. And this is what if you would like to say about the Polybius and Monarchia Mixta, it was something what is added in 16th century that just is this system of Commonwealth. But in fact, the system of Commonwealth was prepared already before.
Yes, and the question
is... It was only conceptualization of this system, in fact.
Yeah, it was definitely the useful
because
tool.
It was very, very nice to say, okay, we have something like very, very ancient form as Monarchia Mixta. It sounds very nice, of course, and probably it was this.
Yes, because first of all, most of the writers adopted Polybius and generally his model to describe the Republic. For example, Starowolski. Writers, of course. Let's, for example, take into account what Starowolski. Yes, generally. So, the most popular author of 17th century.
Orzechowski and others.
Yeah, so generally, very, very 16th century, the dominant concept of the Commonwealth. And Fredro also referred to this, but in this Poparcie Wolności, he tried to propose the different concept of organizing the division of power, not basing who is in charge, one, so monarch, few, senate, or many, so generally the people, the political nation. But here, we should remember one thing. Fredro was also, we could say, a grandfather of praxeology. So generally, the concept of good order, dobry porządek, good government, good order, we could say. So how to organize things in an efficient way? And he came to the idea that it's much better to organize this referring to the functions of the institution. So in this poparcie wolności, the systematic of this act, this proposition of this legal act is very important because he started to organize things basing on the division of the functions, not on the person who is in charge or whenever it's a group or many, but on the functions. He started from the king and royal person.
But there is, of course, another question.
Mhm.
Who had the supreme power? And if the supreme power has the sovereignty, because, for example, when we look at these Henderson articles, we have something like a frame organizing this. The most supreme power of the Republic, of the Commonwealth, is the same counted king, same as deputies
Mhm.
and Senate.
So that's a Polybius model.
No,
Yeah.
it was, of course, you can say, but this was the most important organ of supreme sovereign power.
Mhm.
You think that Polybius thought about supreme sovereign
Sovereign
power?
Not,
It
of
was
course.
it was
It was
probably
Baudin, and Baudin
was
was
Baudin.
against this model of mixed government. According to him, only
Okay.
one of these three elements could possess sovereignty.
Yes, but in fact, it was prepared in reality before Baudin. This model of the
All
before
right.
Baudin, in fact.
Yeah. Baudin, all in all, adopted some, let's say, observation which he possessed from Zamoyski. Yes, for example, in the 6 books of the Commonwealth. Yes, it was very, very famous quotes from Zamoyski. But that was the common question and common problem of Polish political vote at the beginning of 17th century. What to do with the sovereignty? If we could have sovereignty which is vested only in one of these 3 groups, in one of these 3 elements, king, senate, or the people. Yes? So generally, that was a relatively easy question. For example, let's compare Łukasz Opaliński, who was very much monarchist thinker. However, he also managed to publish some treatises which were related to the model of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in his Polonia, in his defense of Poland. Yes, and in this book, he's very reluctant to say about the concept of sovereignty. Because, honestly speaking, if he mentioned that the sovereignty is divided, from the point of view of Baudin, in fact, Polish king is not a sovereign.
Well, you mean in time like in this time when the Henderson articles, it was not sovereign. The king was not sovereign, but he, of course, the most important power had same in this act, but in fact, in the same, he has the sovereign power because he could able to do every law and the function of the same was different, as you told about the functionality. The function of the same was also very, but the most important function in this time was even the making the law.
Yes. So
This is why this organ was sovereign, but the king was not so small and not so weak in this time because he still was able to decide about everything because he was the governor. I can say something like ruler. He was a ruler, but of course outside the same, and still in 16th century. And the question who was the sovereign in the 17th century, it is maybe moved.
All right, but we've got something like this. When we refer to, of course, to political vote at that time, we've got this division among Polish political writers about sovereignty. I do like Fredro. He is a Republican thinker. He's truly a Republican thinker. According to him, even in this Poparcie Wolności, who is a sovereign in Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth political nation, it's much even more radical than we've got, for example, in the Netherlands, in Holland, because they've got the idea that sovereignty belongs not to the people, but to this estate, yes, general estate. But Fredro was on the idea that generally, Commonwealth is a community of citizens, and this political nation of the Commonwealth is a real sovereign within the
But
Commonwealth.
acting through the organs like Sejmix and
Yes, but we should remember that the concept of Sejm in Poland is not only the representative body, because we've got the
course.
idea of the Sejm konny, yes, horse Sejm. So generally the idea that all members of nobility could take part in it, in this chamber of deputies.
But it
So
was only idea.
excuse me?
It was only idea. It
Yeah,
never
but,
happened.
Yes, but if we've got such an idea, we've got the
It was
idea
used,
that
of course, by the court of, for example, in Soviet time when
Mhm.
he wanted to make the press for different fractions. They said, if you would not make this what you want, we organize horse same, you know.
Yes,
It was something like
this let's
this.
say direct form of democracy. Even Fredro was skeptical about the idea how it could work out in practice. But all in all, what is characteristic for him? For him, the real sovereign is the people, the political nation. Political nation, of course, composed of nobility.
But of course, in the political system, we could say, of course, that the same was modeled by Sejmix, because
course.
Sejmix organized the people, and the role of Sejmix were created once more in just about this first election when the Hennesian articles were created. So the Sejmix started with new ideas. They started with new conceptions, and to become a very important factor in this political life. So, for example, in the reign of Władysław IV, and after this in the 17th century, they started to organize, for example, the membership of the Sejm, and these people were in the Sejm should follow this politics what the Sejmics wanted.
All right, definitely.
And where you have the nation, you have the organs, and the nation divided in different Sejmics, of course.
But generally, the nation is expressing its will through the organs.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but we've got many institutions in Poland in which the nation could, maybe not many, but some significant, like election viritim. Yes, which was very characteristic that here we've got the decision was made by the whole nation. Yes, in person.
By this person they came.
Yes,
but everybody had the role, had the right to come.
Yes.
When he didn't come, it was his problem.
But the decision was made by the people. Yes, of course, from the practical point of view, we know that it depends on the situation how many of them came, but still, it was possible for every single citizen, yes, male citizen, to take part in this election. So, except of this, then you now provoke me to one question, to the question of fundamental rights. Yes, because Fredro treated these fundamental rights as a special ones, which could be changed, amended only during the interregna. Why? Because in that time, referring to this relation, husband and wife, yes, during the lifetime of king, the wife is under the power of his husband, of the king. But wife, this Commonwealth, who is a real sovereign in fact, only this nation could change that fundamental rights, and only during the interregna.
Yes, but it was quite clear also in the first it came in the first free election because the nation came everything in his hands, and it was quite clear just in this time already. But the problem was, and I think it didn't change it in the 17th century, that even if maybe we should say so, that even when the nation decided about the new law, about fundamental law, so I'm not quite agree with this word fundamental law, because I think it is quite different. But of course, we can use this word in this time.
Like leges fundamentale.
Even when nation made this new fundamental laws during the interregnum, it was not changed that king after this should confirm this, and it was prepared in this legal act, in the constitution. In fact, during the coronation same, together with the king, because
yes, but what
was not changed. But the will was, of course, maybe made in this interregnum. The will, to say the same like with the Henrician articles.
But this confirmation, in fact, it was a formal act, because we've got this formula of Zaborowski: non iurabis, non regnabis. Yes.
Yeah.
So generally, what you could do with this?
Yeah, of course.
Of course, it was the question to the king. Yes, if you could not generally take the oath, so you will not rule the country. So
no, it was, of course, maybe not understand it very good to understand it when the people ask why you say about Henrician articles in the context the year of 1576, because it was made in 1573. No, in fact, it was forced in law just in 1576 during this same. This principle was not changed. Everything what the people decided during the interregnum should be. It had to be confirmed during this coronation same. Because it just summarize everything what prepared. Of course, different orders made for the organization of elections, something like this, it were not important. But something like fundamental laws, something what changed the system, of course, it was definitively the most important, and the most important to confirm during this coronation same.
Yeah, so generally there is the question of this Polish-Lithuanian political vote, but we've got the different interpretation of the role of the actors, for example. Here we've got Fredro, who is definitely a Republican thinker. Yes, we've got the monarchist like Opaliński, who would definitely sided the king. Yes,
the question, of course, is if the king was for the Fredro, he was Republican. He was the monarch.
No, he was not a monarch. He was rather a rector. The Latin term rector, he was not a monarch. He was not a dominus. He was a princeps. He was a rector. Yes, the words which were used. Or finally, economist.
You would like to say that in the meaning of Fredro, the position and the position of king were depreciated. In this time, in his view, that it was, how to say, yes, depreciated to the position of rector, not monarch. But in 1573, it was a monarch.
Yeah, so definitely. But we've got the evolution. It was a vivid organized. This political vote, and in fact, the development of this political vote in 17th century was relatively rich, vivid, interesting, very comparing, and even we could say more developed than in many Western countries. We've got the vision of the 17th century, unfortunately, even today, based on generally, it is not so bad on the trilogy of Sienkiewicz. Now we've got basing on some TV series, yes, as this country of the let's say, some local foolies, yes, to put it lightly. But in fact, that was the elites. There were the highly educated, very intelligent people who were in the constant contact with the intellectual life, also in the Western world, and they managed to even to develop the institution and solutions which were not present in that time in Western Europe. Because what? In this poparcie wolności, basing on this functional division of of political bodies, yes, of the king as an executive power, parliament as a legislative, same senate as a legislative power and control power, yes. What is more, he clearly demanded a stronger separation of the judicial power from the other branches of government, because he was on the opinion, all right, what was the case of Lubomirski? That was the court same, yes, highly under the pressure of the king. What was the case of Radziejowski? It was not the case which was the trial in front of tribunal, but it was the trial in front of one of the minister or royal minister, yes, of martial court, we could say, as it was now. So according to him, only the true separation of judicial power of tribunals and courts from executive and legislative power could guarantee freedom, yes. And he demanded that the person who held the position of the royal court could not participate in Sejm, could not participate in tribunal, for example, because the separation of functions and separation of person who held these functions, yes. So we've got here the line of interpretation of the concept of the division of power. We've got here the model of interpretation, which in fact was 80 years before Montesquieu. Yes, here we've got it in the form of a project of a legal act. Montesquieu, of course, prepared the treatises. Yes, it's of
And
course
it was very
explained.
well known and written and read, of course,
Yes.
all over the Europe, of course. And the problem of Fredro was that he prepared different copies. That was also very interesting that he was able to find different copies with different versions, of course. But these copies, this version, even this most important, were not very well known for the publicity. And
Yes,
this is
probably they were spread in during this interregna 68, 69. Yes, so
yeah.
that's one thing. So that was this period, but probably Fredro was relatively a little bit afraid that he came relatively far in his concept how to reform the Commonwealth. He, for example, proposed that it is important to change the lifetime offices into 2-year terms offices, something which was adopted in 1672 in Confederation in Gołąb and in Lublin. Yes, it was one of the adoption which finally was not introduced in force, unfortunately. So generally, in this book, he proposed this new functional division of power and generally much deeper democratization of the whole system, as we could see.
Yes, and of course, and this is why we can discuss about only something like testimony of this time, not something or changing this political life, because we know how was the reign of John Sobieski and how many chances he lost, of course. And when he tried to change in the system, it was only something like not very good steps to reform the system. And he, for example, tried to organize different councils around his person and his status, this council. But of course, it was something new, but it was not a real reform of the constitutional system of the republic. It was something what is going worse and worse, and this is that this project or which prepared Fredro state still like only a project.
Yeah.
And we can, of
Unfortunately.
course, discuss is about the level of this political thought and political constitutional thought as a very good example how high was this level in during the amongst several persons that were acted in this political life, as Fredro was, and yeah. So
From the point of view of constitutional vote, but vote not a, of course not a practice. I think that this poparcie wolności, this support of freedom, so this project of constitution could be treated somehow as a step between Henrycian articles and the 3rd of May constitution. We've got here the structure, which is very functional and well ordered. And Fredro rightly at the beginning stated that the good organization of this document is important. Yes, his praxeological, let's say, from
and it was a very good scene in different details what he prepared in this project, that he was he wanted to change this political law because, you know, for example, the Henrycian articles were very general, but not chaotic, as I say. They're general, but Fredro was much more detailed, and he was able to show how in different principles, small principles, but very important for the political life, he is able to show a specific way how to solve these problems. And this is very important. This project is very important because he was much more wide perspective. He had much more wide perspective how to prepare this system.
Yeah, and honestly speaking, it's much easier to prepare the project constitution by one single person and to remain consistent within the systematic than have a project which is proposed by several people, by a group of them. Yes, that's on the other hand. And on the other hand, we've got also the 17th century and the encyclopedic movement in 17th century, not this 18th century Enlightenment encyclopedic movement, but this 17th century related to such names like Jesuit scholars, like, for example, Kircher. Yeah. So the idea how to create the systematic knowledge, and this question how to create the systematic constitutional act is also reflected in this document, in this work.
Okay, so we just today started with the presentation of a very specific project, constitutional project, which was made by Andrzej Maximilian Fredro in the middle of the second part of the 7th century, as a very interesting testimony of this level of the level of the constitutional thought in this time. I think that maybe we made this quite much more easier and much more clear now. What does it mean, this project? And I would like to thank you very much for this coming here and to this in participation, the discussion about this very interesting question. What is this poparcie wolności?
My great honor, and thank you very much again for this invitation and this very interesting discussion.
I think that, of course, it is not the last, of course, the invitation. I think that we find the next possibilities to do this, to do it in the future. And but for today, I would like to thank you very much for this, and
thank you.
Thank you very much.